All right, so this is kind of a continuation of like some Goodreads videos I've been doing this year. I've done like underrated books that are on my shelves. I've looked at average low rated books. I've done a few. I haven't made a playlist for it. Maybe I should. I just have been mining this database this year for some reason. The only one I like never do is like my top average rated, because it's just Sarah J. Maas and Sanderson. Like, it's not interesting. I feel like it's like, yeah, those are things. And I truly am normally like a popular opinions girly, you know? So what I wanted to do, since I last went over the 20 lowest rated books, I wanted to look at all my 2-star and lower books. So I don't think I'm going to include my 2.5 stars. And right now my iPad's in front of me, so I'm trying to load this stuff, because shouldn't I have done that before I started filming? Yes, but hear me out. I'm tired. I'm tired. It's very chill. And I'm going to probably not go into too much detail into books that I've talked about in other video series, or I've talked about a lot this year, because I don't think that's interesting for you. I don't think it's interesting for me, and I don't like to beat a book when it's down, you know? I can only do it so much. So let me get to the beginning. So let's start with like the 2 stars, and I only have a few 1 stars. I don't really have these ranked. I don't like ranking the badness, but some are definitely going to be more 2 stars because I thought they were a waste of my time, and less because like the craft was bad. Because I think my rating scale is more tied to entertainment value or enjoyment. And sometimes the appreciation value is usually what changes it from a 2 to 3 star if it was a difficult read for me. So something could be a really easy read and maybe not written poorly, but it's not going to get that 3 star if I was like super bored and I don't think it was doing anything interesting. So that's going to be happening a fair bit. And looking at this, I can definitely already off the bat see, that Goodreads reading challenge I did last year produced several 2 stars, because I really don't have that many. I think if I look at all of the 2 stars and below, and some of those are 2.5, I only have maybe like 30. And I've been tracking my reading since 2016. And oddly enough, I noticed some of the ones that came on here I definitely read before 2016, and I was just like, vibing my rating. And some of those are like some of the young adult books I read when I was a young adult, and some were like required reading from high school, but not all the required reading from high school. I don't know what my brain was thinking when it was recording things. Also, if you hear things in the background, hopefully you don't, because this microphone is hopefully better than that, there is like a neighborhood concert happening, and it's very loud, and it's literally like a mile away from me, but I can hear it in my house. But there's nothing I can do about it, so we're just going with it. So let's start with those Goodreads books. I got 4 of them here. So that really tells you, maybe I shouldn't do that project this year. Maybe. We'll see if I'm interested in the books. That'll probably be a better determinant thing. Or maybe I'll just let myself DNF. Last time I was like, no, you're going to finish it. And truly, even though I didn't like those books, it was a project I could do, and I needed a project I could do in that time in my life. So it still, I think, was more beneficial than not. That said, these all 4 had 2 stars. And let's start just like with the 2 Greek retellings. I did not give all the Greek retellings 2 stars, but I did for these 2. And that's Stoneblind and Atalanta. Stoneblind's a retelling of Medusa. Atalanta is I don't know if it's a retelling of Atalanta, but it's a focusing on Atalanta's story. And yeah, I just didn't think either of these were that interesting. And they were easy to read, but I was bored. And they're just surface level Greek retelling feminism things, and like I agree with the general premise, I guess, but it's just boring to me. I think you should be doing something interesting with the stories, and I just don't think they were. That's just an opinion of mine. Like, oh man, Stoneblind, we're gonna make Perseus a jerk? Who thought that was gonna happen? You know, like it's just... And like Atalanta wasn't bad, but again, I just wasn't like that interested. I think part of the problem for both of these is that neither of the female characters felt like characters to me. Like, I love Circe by Madeline Miller. I think that one's amazing. I think that one took a lot of liberties. And I think that's the whole point when you're doing a retelling. Like, take liberties, you know, do stuff, make it your own. I don't know. And I like Greek retellings quite a bit. Like, I love Greek stories. I love the movie Hercules from Disney, and we all know how inaccurate that is. When you're adapting something, you don't have to stay so true and rigid. I don't know. The Unmaking of June Farrow was such a bland whatever book that, like, probably now, far away from it, I'm like, why didn't I give it 3 stars? I don't know. I was in a rage when I read it. I bet I could watch the video where I reviewed it and remember my rage, but I did not like that book. I think it had the speculative element I didn't enjoy, and I just didn't have a good time with it. And so, yeah, I think part of it was that I don't think it was a fantasy book, but it was put in the fantasy book section of Goodreads, and I didn't enjoy my time. I think that's where the rage came from. Because it's not a fantasy book, the speculative element is decidedly not fantasy. It's not. Nope. It is speculative, but we don't, do genres like that on Goodreads. It's honestly closer to a historical fiction. And it was fine. It was okay. But it got 2 stars because I really didn't care for what it was doing. And then the other one from that project was Witch King by Martha Wells. And I do think 2 stars is the right rating because I think my actual enjoyment is 1. But I appreciate it enough to give it a 2. Okay, like that's how much I don't vibe with this book. And I get confused because a lot of people with similar taste to me really like this book. And I don't know why. And I don't understand. And also I found out by looking at this that it's there's going to be a series called The Rising World. And I am not reading that. I will say part of it could have been my headspace when I picked it up. But also I was still reading dense, confusing things at the time that I was having fun with. And I did not have fun with this dense, confusing thing. And also I think my big thing was I just didn't know the purpose of it for a really long time. And then even after I finished it, I was like, what did we do? Who were these people I followed? And what is this world? Like I had never felt so confused. Not even confused. Just like, I just didn't know anything. It just literally just left me so instantly because I never had a good grasp of what was going on. And part of that could have been me, for sure. I don't, like on a sentence-to-sentence level, they were not bad sentences. But I didn't care for the content or whatever we were doing with it. So who knows? People really like it. I don't. So, and it got a 2-star because I appreciated that I knew it actually wasn't trash. But I really disliked my time consuming it. Another book I won't get into because I read it this year and I've already talked about it a fair bit is Womb City. Yeah, this one was a combination of boredom, not liking the execution of them, like kind of the genre blending, and really disliking the main character. Next up in our 2-star thing is I've got Burnt Sugar, which I've talked about recently. I don't really feel like I need to get into it. It was the longest 200-some page book I had read at the time. I didn't like the execution of the smell descriptions, like a lot. Like it broke me from the story really frequently. And it wasn't my favorite type of unreliable narrator. So I just wasn't like having a good time. It was okay. Like sometimes I think if you're distracted by the actual sentences, it's just no longer a fun reading experience, no matter what genre you're in. And that's what was happening to me. So I wasn't having a good time. The next one, when don't I dislike this book? Suy Bane. I hate Suy Bane. Like I just don't. And this is another one where I would give it 1 star. But it's getting another star because I appreciate that it's actually not trash and most of my 1-star energy is my own baggage. And it would for sure get 1 star if I didn't know that this is actually autobiographical for the author. If this author had not gone on the record saying that these are parts of his lived experience, I would honestly just be like, this is just harmful trauma that you were just doing for 500 pages. And I think part of it is that's just not how I like to experience stories that I have lived experience relationship to. Like, yes, I did not grow up in the 80s in Glasgow, Scotland, and no, I'm not gay, but I did have a parent who had drug issues, and it did severely affect my childhood. And he did relapse, and it's this whole thing. And so the way that the story only shows darkness, and then the one moment it shows any hope is literally to pull the rug out from under you, is in a type of emotional manipulation that was not respectful to those who are reading the book who have similar experiences to the author, in my opinion. It was just very shocking, and maybe it was cathartic for him. I don't know, hence the 2 stars. But for me, it sent me into a spiral. I don't like the ending, and I didn't, like, and I've now since read other books with similar themes, like Demon Copperhead, where I'm like, yeah, you can do this without making me, like, shrivel into a depressive anxiety ball with my blood pressure going through the roof. Like, you can do this with grace. You can do this and accept that life is not just the darkest moments. There is also moments of light, and the moments of light don't mean darkness is just around the corner. It's just not a healthy viewpoint, and I just really don't like Suy Bane. Just don't. It bothers me. That Testaments. This is another book where it probably should be a 3-star, but because it was given the Booker, it becomes a 2-star because I'm angry at the book for being that way. And, like, I guess I don't know how it goes. Can you accept or decline a Booker? Maybe I'm being too harsh on Margaret Atwood, but at the end of the day, I read this and it was such an odd experience. I was very bored, first of all. It wasn't like this was a breezy 400-page book or something like that. No, it was super boring. And I had watched most of the show at this point. I think at the time I'd watched the show up to wherever it was. I don't know what season we were in at that point. I've never finished the show. It's a little depressing for me. Like, maybe one day, I don't know. I don't even know if it's finished. For a while, I could tell when a new season came out because everyone would comment on my Handmaid's Tale video and, like, kind of try and tell me I don't understand feminism, which is like, no, I get feminism. This book's not good feminism. Like, I don't understand. Like, it's kind of odd because you can tell it's inspired by the show, which is inspired by the first book, but then does its own stuff. And I guess I don't know how much of that stuff was from the author or that the writers of the show did on their own. And, like, in particular, the character of Aunt Lydia is really weird to read in that book. Like, really odd. And there's a lot of dissonance. And then also just, like, it's just so weird. Like, the first book is such good art. Like, having these recordings of a woman who can never talk, kind of descending into madness in this new world. Yeah, it was amazing. Like, I thought that had some beautiful sentences. It had some interesting introspection. That it had value to me. It was interesting, engaging. It had value. This was like, I don't know, very wishful thinking that didn't make sense. Like, the end of the book, I do not believe happened, could happen. And it felt just like such a different writing style. It was so weird. I didn't like it. So I really didn't enjoy my time. But the actual anger comes from it having won the Booker the same year as Girl, Woman, Other, which is one of my favorite books of all time. And it's like, these are not even remotely close to the same quality of literature. Like at all. Like, yeah. The Cat Who Saved Books. I really don't like this one. Mainly because if you haven't read The Cat Who Saves Books, it basically, inadvertently, I think, regurgitates the types of discussions we have on the bookish internet all the time. Are audiobooks reading? Consumerism? Should you read the books you own, or is it okay to just, collect them? Are classics and literary fiction more important than genre fiction? And basically every time, the book itself ends up on, like, the part of the issue that I think is kind of actually, like, wrong. Like, audiobooks are reading. It uses the same part of your brain to process auditory sounds and visual sounds. Like, that's the same part of your brain. You can say it feels different, sure, but, like, at the end of the day, the brain, the processing center, it's the same. It's the same. But regardless, it was funny being told by a book that audiobooks are not reading while listening to the audiobook of it. That was funny. That was hysterical to me. The cat's not in it enough. So if you were looking for the cat's just really not a big part. And what I wanted from this book, like, was a discussion about grief. And it's barely that. Like, truly, it's barely that. It's mostly about this kid who likes books and keeps interacting with figures who have interesting relationships with books and kind of saving them. And it's sort of connected to this bookstore that he kind of takes care of because his grandfather passed away. And that's part of the grief. And I guess going through all these trials is how he's processing his grief, but none of it feels connected to that. And it was really weird. And I know it's a translated work, but I actually do think a lot of the messages just, like, don't work when you're in the bookish internet and you hear them all the time. Like, if you have disposable income, spend it how you want, right? Like, I'm not going to tell people how many books they should have. I have friends who have thousands of books and I have friends who have 20 books. They're both my bookish friends and I don't judge either of them. Like, don't get it. So that book was just really preachy in all the wrong ways. And what I wanted was a story about grief. And it was just not good at that. This next one's funny. I think I I think 2 stars makes sense. Sometimes I think it's like a funny 1 star. I don't know. This is Free the Darkness by Calamity, which you probably maybe know this author because they did have one traditionally published book that I don't think was really well liked, or at least not liked enough that I've seen the sequel or seen other works by this author. But this is her popular self-published series on Kindle. And my friend really liked it and he wanted me to read it. And I felt really bad how much I didn't like it. Because it was like my real life in-person friend. And I was like, I don't like this book. And I think this was a fascinating experience because I read the book. I didn't know who the author was. I didn't know Calamity was the author. I just read this book. But reading this book, if you had asked me, did a guy or a girl write this book, I would have bet all my money that it was written by a dude. It's not, but the reasons I thought it was written by a dude is that the main character is the most Gary Stu you've ever met. It's almost kind of quaint and funny how good he is at everything, even though he has amnesia, I think. So, he's a great fighter. He's great at stealth, even though he's so huge. But he's also good at stealth. And he's also very charismatic and political, even though he has no memory and can't remember anything. So that doesn't really make sense. Regardless, he's great at everything. And he has to go on this quest to do a thing, which you will not be satisfied by the end of this first book. It definitely is not episodic. There's a cliffhanger, but I never continued. And every girl he meets, oh my God, it doesn't matter who they are, what skills they may or may not have. They could be not like other girls. They could be like a princess. They are falling for him. Oh my God, he's so attractive. Look at him. And I'm just like, wow. I wasn't even upset. I was just like, this is, wow, I haven't read something this stereotypical in a really long time. And it's not being satirical. It's written straight. So I didn't enjoy that. I don't like questing stories either. So, it has that. But yeah, Calcate's a woman. And it's not like this is even a sexy book. I don't remember any smutty, sexy romance scenes. Maybe they're there. I don't remember them. So they were obviously not memorable. It's one thing if we're playing into weird fantasy tropes, romance fantasy tropes, but we're not. It was so weird. It's a weird book. I can't even really hate it, but I did not enjoy my time. Next up, I already talked about this one recently, so I won't talk about it too much, but Black Leopard, Red Wolf. If you want to know more of my thoughts, go see the previous Goodreads video I did, because I talked about that and Womb City in there. Ooh, one of the only Sandersons I've given 2 stars to. This is Calamity, the 3rd book in the Reckoners. I just don't like the Reckoners. I categorically do not recommend the Reckoners to anyone. It's just... I don't like first-person point of view Sanderson. We'll just start there. I don't like how he writes inner monologue at all. It always involves a quirk, and the quirk is always overused. In this case, David loves quirky metaphors, and they're not funny. They're not. He thinks they're funny, but they're not. And he's a teenage boy, and he's just kind of obnoxiously stupid, But, for the most part, up until that point, it's a 3-star series. I'm moving along. I'm really curious about the reveal, because in this series, superheroes are evil. And one day, just people started getting powers. It just came out of nowhere. So I wanted to know, well, why is this happening? I was curious about the lore. And Sanderson traditionally has rewarded me for my patience. The reveals in Calamity are absolute garbage. So I hated that book. Therefore, I do not recommend that series. It's really not fun for me in any way. Next up, oh man, I've never really talked about this series on the channel, and I'm kind of bummed because a bunch of people had been reading it that I know, but I've already read it, and I didn't love it enough to reread it, so it's just a bummer that they're having all these discussions, and I'm too far removed from it. But this is the Unholy Consult by R. Scott Baker, which is, I believe, the last book we currently have in his Prince of Nothing world, and this is the Aspect Emperor quartet of it. One thing that happened, and it's really obvious when it happened, is that the last 2 books in Aspect Emperor were not traditionally published, I believe. Or at least the editing of it was vastly different from the first 5 books in this world. They became longer, they were less tight, the meandering increased, and you could feel that, okay? At least I could. I didn't even know that was a thing that could happen, and it wasn't until I was searching Reddit forums after reading it that I learned about how it was published, because I'm why do these 2 feel so different? The one before it, I was still, like, in it. I was curious about the ending, and, like, we know I'm an endings person. Like, I care about how we stick the landing. We did not stick. We did not stick. We stumbled, we fell, we hit our face. I don't know how it ended. Like, I read it, I don't understand it. And I reread it, and I went on Reddit forums, I tried to understand it. And, like, it was also, I don't know if it was the grossest book in the series, but it was up there. And I think I just have a threshold for grossness that this series really pushed. Like, it really pushed. There's a war campaign in this book, and the things it has to do are pretty rough. And like I said, I just felt like there were a lot of plot holes and inconsistencies I couldn't wrap my head around, and like, it just bothered me. And it was a shame, because I do think it had a lot of promise. It's a very interesting book series. So I don't necessarily not recommend it, but I did not enjoy that last book. So if you're like me, you probably wouldn't either. Oh, now we're in my, like, young adult book section. Let's first start with a book that's not a young adult book that I actually reviewed when I started the channel, and then we'll go down some memory lane here. But Brave New World, which, like, I give a 2-star here because I appreciate it and I understand the context in which it was written. If it was written today, it's a 1-star, but I get it was written in the early 20th century. That said, even giving the caveats that, you know, people are racist. Of course, people are misogynistic. That's just gonna be there. Let's say I forget that. It's stupid boring. Like, it's not fun. And my rule is, okay, if you're going to be a product of your time, if you're going to have the awkward racism, if you're going to write really bad female characters, you better at least be interesting. And it's not. And then also, like, its science idea, its science fiction component is very pro-eugenics. And the author themselves, I looked into it, he's like a little pro-eugenics, which is just like, there's no redeeming quality for me in this book, especially because at the time of reading it, yes, and this is why it gets the extra star, I respect the fact that maybe it was one of the first cog in the machine looking at this type of futuristic society books. Like, I get that. But I have read these themes better and with more nuance. And again, just the plot could be more interesting, and I just still get so enraged by the indigenous representation in this book. Like, when this book was written is the same time period as when the Killers of the Flower Moon's happening in real life, okay? And if you've watched that movie or you've read that nonfiction, you know that indigenous people in some parts of our country were incredibly wealthy, they were well-dressed, they had nice things, they were not quote-unquote savages. And, like, I get it. People just have perceptions. I don't even know if this author was American. I can't even remember at this point. But I don't care. Because in reality, they were stupid rich, especially in some of the tribes who had the fields with oil. Like, that was the whole reason Killers of the Flower Moon happened. And the way they are written is like an 1800s representation. And maybe that's thematically the point. I don't care. It's not interesting. It's offensive. And again, the plot just didn't. Oh, I was so bored reading this book, and I was so angry because I was so bored. I had nothing to distract me from my anger. This is one of the first rant reviews I have on my channel. And I'm just like, it has no redeeming quality to me. Like, I am willing to read a lot of things that people don't like. There are some tropes people are like, no, I will not read a book with the fridging trope. I'll read a book with the fridging. Like, you know, this was just like, ugh, gross. Gross. And the female character was so bad. Ugh. Like, they're usually just surface level, like, just there to be a love interest, and she was just, like, another level. I read this book, like, wow, I read it, like, 4 years ago. I have so many thoughts, 4.5 years ago. Okay, now let's go down my young adult memory lane, because that's what I have for the next few. Let's first talk about the Mortal Instruments books. For some reason, I did not give the second book in this trilogy 2 stars. Who knows why? I gave the first and third 2 stars. I like books 4 through 6, actually, in that series, like, quite a bit. But the first 3, the main character, she's just, like, super bland, like, really boring. There is the whole, like, I'm just gonna say the trope, because at this point, people who care about Immortal Instruments have read it. But there's the whole, like, oh, we can't be together because we're brother and sister thing, which was awful to read in real time. Oh my god, I hated that. That's not. I love soap operas. That's not, no, I don't like that soap opera trope. I don't like it. It stresses me out a lot. I was watching Jane the Virgin recently, and I thought they were going to pull that trope, and I was like, oh no, they didn't. They did something also bad, but not as bad. I was just like, I cannot handle it. So yeah, that was my main gripe with it. Yeah. New Moon. I don't know why this is... I have New Moon and Breaking Dawn. I do like Eclipse quite a bit. I feel like New Moon should be higher. I think it should be a 3-star. Especially if I maybe read it nowadays. Because, like, I love Jacob, so why don't I like New Moon? I don't know. I can't remember the pacing of it. I can't remember why I gave it 2 stars when I randomly put in ratings in 2016. I feel like that one should be 3 stars. But Breaking Dawn, that's a 2-star. It could maybe be a 1-star. I don't know. That book's bananas. I read that when I was in high school, so I was a young adult reading this really popular young adult series. Like, it came out when I was a sophomore in high school. And I was just, like, jaw on the floor, like, what? Like, Eclipse is so fun. You got, like, classic love triangle moments. And then Breaking Dawn is like, what's happening? Renesmee? Imprinting on Renesmee? Like, it was wild. The movies are so much better because I think they're just funny. I don't think the book's funny. So yeah, that was a time. I also have Bisinger, which is the 3rd book in the Inheritance cycle. I think that's what it's called. I never read the 4th book. Mainly because the 4th book came out when I was in college and I didn't think to pick it up. And the 3rd book was pretty bad because we spent too much time with the dwarfs. That's it. That's my review of that. I was bored out of my freaking mind. For some reason, one of the only high school books I rated on here was Withering Heights, and it got 2 stars. That seems right, but I don't know why I went out of my way to rate this one and not all the other ones I read. But I don't like Withering Heights. And I think it's symbolically lazy in a way that makes it difficult to read. Like, if you called one Catherine and one Kathy, you would understand that one's the mother and one's the daughter, and that they are linked in cycles of abuse. Like, we're not that dumb. Like, it could just be easier. It could just be easier. I gave Feast for Crows 2 stars. I don't know. It's probably nowadays I'd give it 3 stars, maybe. I think I was just bored. Crossroads of Twilight gets 2 stars because it was transphobic and too long and nothing happened. Like, if it's going to be a Nothing Happens books in the Wheel of Time, it needs to be like 600 pages, not 800 pages. And legit, you could summarize it in 3 pages and miss nothing. That's like so bad. It's such a bad Wheel of Time book for me. And then we have Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. This was my first book that I really wanted to DNF, and I kept pausing, and I did finally finish it one summer. And I was just like, I really don't like this book. I think you like it better if you like London. Maybe? But I don't dislike London. I've just only been there once, so I think a lot of the atmosphere just went over my head. But I think the main character is very boring. And I actually just think that Neil Gaiman's prose style doesn't work for me. Because I think there's only one that I've liked, and it was the novella of Ocean at the End of the Lane. And, like, I kind of like American Gods, but it was a little overwritten for me. I never tried Anasazi Boys, and I didn't like Stardust. So yeah, I think he's just, like, fine for me. And now I don't have to worry about it because it wasn't a high priority, and whenever authors screw up, they just become lower on my priority list. And he, unfortunately, has been really screwing up. I'm not going to get into it. You can Google it. It's not great. And then our last one is my truly 1-star rating because it pissed me off. And that's Boy Snowbird. I did talk about it in the previous video, but it has a very transphobic ending that is pivotal to the plot, and I was not okay with it. It's a classic. Our main character was abused by their father. And I'm just spoiling the ending of this. I hate this book, okay? This is what the transphobic ending is, okay? You find out at the end that the father was her mother, and the being transness of it all was part of the abuse. I don't know. It's a very harmful stereotype that has no basis in reality. It was not well researched. There was a shit ton not well researched about this book in general. The author's British Nigerian, writing about African Americans passing in Massachusetts in the mid-20th century, and like, it's not, like, the worst thing, but she truly did not understand how, like, this town in Massachusetts would not be cool after they found out that this family had just been passing. They wouldn't treat them normal again. They wouldn't be just like, oh, that's weird. Let's just get back to normal. That's not how it would happen. The North was very, very aggressively racist. Not, like, in different ways from the South, but still, sometimes even more violently. Like, it's just not a thing we talk about. And it sucks also because it's actually, like, her writing is really good. It's so frustrating. Like, Helen Oyemi has good writing. Just really poor research in some areas, and I don't necessarily think it's malicious, but I can't trust her, so I don't read any more of her stuff, and you should not read this book because it's bad. Like, that ending is so bad, and it's so pivotal because the whole point is, like, learning why these women are the way they are. And it truly centers around that reveal. You can't separate it from that reveal. It's such a problem. So yeah, these are my bottom rated books. I feel pretty okay with it. It means in general, I don't force myself to finish a 2-star or 1-star book that often. So yeah, let me know any of your least favorites if you agree or disagree with me on any of these things. And otherwise, if you just want to leave an emoji to let me know you're here. Oh, I don't know. I'm just looking through these books. Leave a cat for the cat who saved books. That book really does just, like, irk me. I'm just like, ugh. We did decide as a book club that'd be a better animated movie. And I still agree with that. Anyways, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.